Hello, I am Manuel Gutierrez from the Cyber Physical System Lab in the Johannes Kepler University, and I'm going to present our article published in the Journal of Information and Software Technology titled Empirical Software Product Line Engineering, a Systematic Literature Review. This article was performed together with the Professor Eva Chacón from the Universidad Estatal de Milagro and the Professor José Galindo and David Benavides from the Universidad de Sevilla. In this systematic lecture review, we focus on the empirical study in software product line engineering with human intervention. The reason for that is we wanted to define research opportunity in this area. And as far as we knew, there were not systematic review empirical studies in software product line engineering. For this review, we follow the guidelines by the Professor Kitchener, where we define 3 stages. First, a formalization of the review, previous to this conduction, then conducting the review itself, and then reporting the result of this review. So the first step in the planning of the review is identifying the need for our review. As we said, the reason for this review is to identify research opportunities because we haven't found any systematic review in empirical studies in software product line engineering. The second step is identify the research question that we want to answer with this study. So we describe 3 questions. First of this is, are empirical studies with human intervention, specifically which strategies are followed in these empirical studies? Then what processes of the software product line engineering framework are addressed in these studies? And third, in which context are these studies done, academic environment or industrial environment? The second question that we describe is, which is the quality of these empirical studies? The third question is, which is the scope of these empirical studies? About the scope, we differentiate between in which venues are these studies published, journal, conferences. Second, which is the evolution through the year of these studies. And third, what authors research in this area. The third question to identify in this planning is which protocol we're going to follow to do this review. So we first consider to make a search, an automatic search of the primary sources. For this search, we consider a search string, including the wording for software product lines, plural, singular, software product families, and also include wordings for empirical studies like empirical, survey, case study, experience report, or experiment. In this regard, we have to say that we also consider including in this search string the software product line engineering processes like domain engineering, but the problem doing a search with these processes, if we wanted to include the complete set of processes, was resulting in a very long string, so it was not feasible to do such an expression in the normal bibliography databases. So we will have to perform some automatic processes to make the complete set of results, separating this logical expression in different subsets. And second, after doing some reviews of the preliminary reviews, we detected that there were not additional papers resulting of this search, just the opposite, that there were a lot of papers that were not including this explicitly the name of the processes. Second, we have to define which criteria are going to use to filter which studies are going to be considered in this study. So as criteria, we define as inclusion criteria, we consider the paper from 2000 until 2018. The reason of that is because first, the processes of software product line were defined in 2000. And for the final year is because we performed this literary review in 2019, so we only consider papers until 2018. Second, we only consider peer review articles, either journal or conference. And third, we only wanted to consider empirical articles with human intervention. And as exclusion criteria, we consider that we needed to eliminate the duplicate papers as we were searching in different bibliography database. We have to be careful about that. Second, because of looking for the quality of the peer review articles, we consider only top of 5 conference where either the number of articles were the most or the index, the impact index were considered the better. Also, as exclusion criteria, we consider only papers, journal paper were with more than 10 pages. So the empirical strategy could be well documented. We should additionally to consider for conference not this limit, because 10 pages in some cases is a very strict limit. So for conference, we consider a 6 pages limit to avoid short papers of only demo descriptions. And third, we only consider or we excluded, let's say, papers that were not studying primary sources, but were based on tertiary reviews. And also we excluded, to avoid bias, papers in which it is a empirical strategy. The participants were only authors of the paper. And as a third step of the protocol, the review protocol, we consider automatic extraction of some generated field at the same time that we were performing this search, like extracting the title, the publication year, or the authors. And second, for the answering of the questions, we define a set of templates that we could use systematically to answer this question at the same time that we were reading the papers. These forms are included in the article, and you can see an example here that defining exactly the same question that is defined under search questions, like which processes of the software product line engineering framework have been studied. Well, for the conduction of the review, we took the main 4 bibliography databases, ACN, IEEE, Scopus, and ScienceDirect. We apply with the interface that provide the search stream that we have before described. This gave us a result more than 2,000 papers. And we use the inclusion and exclusion criteria to filter this paper, who resulted in only 60 papers. To say that this big solution was mainly due to the number of duplicates among the database, that was more than 400. Also, in this more than 2,600 papers were in conference and not in this top 5 list. And also to determine the scope of the literary review. Its scope, we remember, is experimental studies in product line engineering with human intervention. 900 of this paper were not really focusing on this scope. After that, we also proceed with a manual search based on our expertise on the literature and the reference in this list of paper, and we found an additional 2 papers that were included at the primary studies. Well, with these 62 primary studies, we proceed to analyze the content and answer the research questions. We remember that first research question is, are there empirical studies with my intervention? Which strategies are used in these studies? Which processes of the software product line engineering framework have been studied, and in which context is this research done? Regarding the strategy, we find that most of the half, a bit more of the half, use the case study strategy, and the rest, most of them use experiment. If you see the number, there is one additional paper that is not using case study or experiment, that's using a quasi-experiment. We make the hypothesis that this is because the industrial content are close to the software product line community, so that makes the case study the favorite strategy. Regarding the processes, remember these processes were defined in the software product line engineering book, Foundations, Principles, and Techniques. We can see that for the case study, the preferred technique is the domain requirement, the main processes addressed, and also for the experiment. Regarding the context, we see that most of the papers are done in an industrial context, but we can take a more detailed insight analyzing this number as we differentiate between case studies and strategies, because in the case of industrial environment, the preferred strategy was case study, but in academic environment, the preferred technique was experiment with an 81%. Also say that if we analyze the set of processes in the software product line framework, we find that not only the domain requirement is the preferred process, but all the processes related to domain engineering covers most of the paper included in the primary study, with 95% of these studies. Regarding the second question, which is the quality of the empirical studies, we consider the guidelines about quality in experiment by Bolling, and in the case of case studies, we consider the guideline defined by Runeson, and we use this criteria to make a comparison of all the items that were fulfilled in each of the paper, considering if they were case study or experiment. Remark that we consider a criteria fulfill as a Boolean, fulfill or not, and in case the paper didn't explicitly remark that this criteria was used, we consider it not fulfilled. So as a summary of this comparison, we checked that almost 20% of the experimental met all the criteria recommended by Bolling, and more than 37% of the case study met not all but 9 of the 10 criteria recommended by Runeson. Regarding the third question, which is the scope of this empirical research, we have three sub-questions. In which journal or conference were published these articles, which is the temporal evolution of this type of studies, and which author or with what authors do research in this area. About the publication, we have classified the list of venues by the most paper published, and we found that the first venue is the conference, the International Conference of Software Product Lines. That is also a reason to present it here. As a second forum, we found the Journal of System and Software with the same number of publications as the International Software Technology Journal. Regarding the evolution of the paper, we find that in the first year of the 2000 decade, there were not so much publication, but from 2011 and 11, this number of publication increased, and they have been maintained regularly in 2013 until 2018. And regarding the origin of the author, we can see that we have authors all over the world, but the main, let's say, poles of this type of publication are Europe and South America, exactly Brazil, but we can also find publication from America, Asia, and Australia or New Zealand. So that was our study. After this analysis, we can confirm that first, there are not so much empirical studies in software product line engineering, so we could consider that there is still a lot of work to do about practical experience. Second, we can say that, claim that the software product line community is very close to the industry, attending to the number of papers in industrial context. Also, another result is that the domain engineering received more attention in terms of empirical studies than application engineering. And also, we also found that we didn't find any empirical evidence based on companies that are not aware of the software product line techniques. So thank you very much. That was my presentation, and I'm looking forward to meeting you online live. Thank you.